welcome back to the ELANIX channel. It's been a while. Today we're talking about STARKLINK, the satellite ISP, and the licensing standoff, the problems they have operating here in South Africa. So before I talk about the licensing bottleneck, for those of you that aren't familiar with what STARKLINK does, it's sort of like MTN or Vodacom providing internet access, but it's via a satellite. So there's a couple of problems with having that operate here in South Africa, and that's what we're going through. These are the two licenses they need. The IE/CNS license that permits them to build the satellites, manage it, operate it in South African territory. Then it's the IECS license. That's a commercial clearance, allowing them to sell the plans, the broadband plans and streaming, as well as billing the customers. And they got three core market barriers though. So on top of this licensing bottleneck, there's a BEE block. And that's South African's regulation. They need 30% equity to be owned by a historically disadvantaged group to qualify. Then there's also frozen licensing. ICASA has not issued a new license in over 14 years, networking license. And usually what happens is a company will buy this from a third party or another business that already has it. And in the GNU impasse, there's some political problems or roadblocks between the minister and ICASA with the strict ownership laws. That ownership stalemate, we're talking about 30% equity owned by disadvantaged groups. That clashes and conflicts with SpaceX. They enforce a global blueprint of retaining 100% control over operational subsidiaries. So there is a way to work around this, and that's what we're talking about now. Equity equivalence, EEIP. Right, that's a practical workaround. That's an alternative to the compliance that I showed you before by rather letting STARKLINK invest in local infrastructure, skills and development, investing in South Africa as a country. That would allow them to retain that 100% ownership. And in response to that, SpaceX has pledged a massive commitment, looking about 500 million rand, so $26 million, to connect 5,000 rural schools with free internet, demonstrating active interest in the framework. Personally, with the work we do here at ELANIX, I think this is a good workaround. You could always look at the results and see how it improves. But there's also a little more to it, and that's what I'm going to show you in the next slide. There's a bit of grey markets and enforcement. Because STARKLINK isn't compliant right now in South Africa, there has been the summoning of a grey market. Actually disabled roaming inside of South Africa. They've warned users, hey, this is not approved, it's not allowed. That's created this sort of grey market where these kits, STARKLINK kits, are being sold maybe in a country next to South Africa, brought in, but those violate the Electronic Communications Act. There's also a CASA crackdown. There's threats of 5 million rand in fines for unlicensed distributors. Right? So these are the ripple effects, some of them that's been created by the situation. There's also POPIA and a lawful interception. The POPI Act, the privacy concerns. When you transmit data across global space constellations, it makes local sovereignty complicated. STARKLINK must establish compliance with cross-border transfer laws to protect South African data. So this is similar to what one of the companies, Percival Cloud, does. But that's more with cloud storage, right? When we talk about data sovereignty, that's all about who can access it, who can control it, who can tamper with it, and who can view, what's contained in this, in the packages that's being sent electronically. So when we talk about sovereignty, we want to make sure that South Africa has control over its own data, right, and that data is being respected. RICA surveillance mandate. RICA requires all local telecom services to allow legal wiretapping. STARKLINK space routing and military-grade encryption complicate that. Yep, so if there's any investigation, the law, they obviously want to be able to access whatever information they might need. So the danger of delay, these networks both the satellites are in orbit. The only thing missing here is a piece of paper. You cannot stop it. That's from the former telecom executive, Yanni van Zyl. And it's like the previous slide, the two previous slides communicate over here that there's already a ripple effect. Satellite and terrestrial providers. So what we're looking at over here is your typical telecoms that you used to, Vodacom, MTN, and in the Starlink, the satellite. So with infrastructure, it's low ground footprint, it relies on the orbit. These traditional ISPs are able to spend billions on the towers, the cabling, and the maintenance of the sites. With Starlink, the 100% national coverage, including rural blind spots, line of sight is dependent with the local telecoms, right? No signal type of thing. Empowerment approach. If they move with the EEIP, which was building the infrastructure, the skills, the SMEs, investing in South Africa as a way to bypass that BEE rule, then that's what would be happening, right? I think it was over $26 million. Whereas local telecoms, they direct 30% of their equity to seeding to black-owned firms. So those are just the two side by side. There's a regulatory pathway I have here, Q3, Q4 of this year. Parliament debates the updates to legally authorize those EEIPs I just spoke about. Q3 of 2027, gather industry feedback. And in late 2027, the official landing, Starlink launches legal operations in SA. So that's what we're looking at. I have some key policy recommendations. Authorized conditionally. South Africa must grant Starlink access to close the digital divide, but under strict guarantees, right, and for national security. So it's all about having that framework in place, and that's going to make sure things work. Heavily audit the EEIP. Do not grant a blanket pass. Mandate independent audited proof of the 2.5 billion. Making sure the money goes where it needs to go, is invested where it needs to be, and making sure that the policies in place are strict. So that's all we have for today. Tell me your take in the comments. Will South Africa change the law for Elon Musk, or will local telcos successfully block Starlink? Alright, that's it. I'll see you in the next one. Remember, with ELANIX, it's more than possible. Have a good day.